What up YouTube, it's Misery Hates Company. In this video, I'm going to show you one of two awesome builds for PvP. These are easily the best builds. My favorite part about Scarlet Witch is there isn't just one build, there's actually several, but these are the two that I play with the most that I do feel like net you the most success in PvP. The first one that we're going to talk about today is just sheer damage. And if you want to get a ton of kills in Omega War, dominate in Dimension Duel, this is the build for you, and I cannot wait to show you because it is a doozy, and this is the one that I actually plan on going for when Transmute is available for Scarlet Witch. So without further ado, let's jump straight into the video. Okay, so first things first, the first thing we're going to do is talk about the special gear, because that's where it gets a little interesting with Scarlet Witch. When it comes to the regional gear, it feels like any of them can work because you're going to use several different amounts of the skills that you need. However, when it comes to the specials, that's where you really need to focus on a specific one. So for this build in particular, we are going to go with Eyes of Osiris. And again, this is my sheer damage build. That's because it doubles down on Chaos Magic, which you only get 2 of. However, for those of you that play Iron Man or have played Iron Man, you also, for your specials and for your regional gear, generally speaking for PvP, you get the benefit of several skills. I think it's 3, but you only actually use 2. So don't be scared of the fact you're only using 2 skills. This is actually relatively normal. So this does double down on the 2 skills that do sheer amounts of damage and apply dots or damage over time effects onto the target, which does net you even more damage. So that is the best special gear for this build, at least for Scarlet Witch. Again, this build is one of 2, so keep that in mind. So Eyes of Osiris is a special gear. When it comes to the regional gear, I would strongly recommend Sakaar. That is because Sakaar, this one gives you crit damage, which is beautiful. It also gives you Chaos class skill, which is obviously what we're going to be focusing on. Again, only 2 skills, but you're using both of them and you're using a few of the other ones, but these are the 2 that you want to do the most damage with or get the most benefit out of by upgrading them. Moving on to skills. Now this is where it gets a little interesting because while these are the best skills that I think work and sort of the rotation that I think works best for this build, you could very well tailor a few of these here and there, but I'll talk about that here in a second. And that's really what I love about Scarlet Witch. It doesn't feel, you don't feel bad building her in any way you want. It feels like it will be viable, and this is just, like I said, a damage focused build. So the skills that I would recommend for this build, and this build in particular is focused more so on Omega War or Alliance Omega War. So the first one we're going to use is Hex Projection, Hex Wave. This is one that does a ton of damage, pretty decent cooldown at 30 seconds, but it also gives you 34.38% of your max HP for 10 seconds. So a third of the cooldown, you do have the shield. And then of course with high CDR, you could get that much lower. Next up, we're going to move over to Witch's Darkness, Witch's Descent. This is a very, very good skill. Low cooldown at 16 seconds. You move through them and you're untargetable when you are moving through them. It does do a little bit of damage at 404%, and then you also lower the defense of the target by 25% for 4.5 seconds. Beautiful skill. Now we go straight into our Chaos, which is where we do all the damage. So this one, we're going to be doing Language of Demise, Runic Wither. Cooldown 25 seconds, required stamina 28. Silences for 2 seconds, and I would strongly recommend you to use these kind of in order. So you get the shield, jump through the target, lower their defense, use this to silence them for 2 seconds. Also, decreases attack by 25% when cursed targets use an attack. So as they attack you to try to, fight, they lower their attack. Deals damage equal to 19.1% of attack when cursed targets are attack skills. So the more they do stuff, the more they hurt themselves, which is beautiful. And it also does 519% damage. Now you get into the big damage. And that is going to be Chaos Magic, Chaos Fear. It does have a decent cooldown at 23 seconds. However, it does hit like an absolute truck. And I don't mean just right here where it does almost 1000% damage, but also applies a dot again, just like the other one, for 13% of your attack for 5 seconds, which is just absolutely crazy. Now keep in mind, this is again going to be buffed by 7 because of its chaos, but then this is also the specific one when it comes to your special gear that you actually get again. So plus 14 on this skill is going to make it do some pretty crazy numbers. So that's why you definitely want to pick this up. It does track as well. So it is click, shoot, and forget it, because you just click it and it's going to track them no matter where they go, and you're going to do a ton of damage to them and apply a dot. Last but not least, this is very situational, but it's definitely one that I would recommend to have in your back pocket. That's going to be Witch's Tongue, Reality Warp. So for this one, it is 35 seconds. It does leave you invincible, and then you go, you are invincible, and then you are invisible. We're using all the I words here It does have, like I said, a 35-second cooldown, but it also recovers your ultimate gauge by 22.35%, which is beautiful. This is a very, very strong build, and this is the one that you kind of leave off to the side. That's why I kind of put it off to the side, like literally with it being number 5, depending on how you play, either on phone or on computer. But it's one that you just hit it when you need to. It's very situational, especially in Omega War and Alliance Omega War. Now, very quickly, I will show you the Dimension Duel recommendation that I would use, which would be this one. So for Dimension Duel, we're going to open up with Shape of Terror Consumption, which again is going to boost our attack by 30% once it's at max stacks. And it does create an illusion, and you are untargetable when you use this skill. I would note it's only when you actually start using it, like right there, and then now you're targetable again. So it's very brief. It's not the whole time. That would just be completely busted broken. But moving on, we go back into Witch's Ascent, which we talked about previously. Now I actually moved this skill a little bit lower, so it's actually part of the priority. And that's because you basically have 3 skills of invulnerability, or you're not being able to be attacked or targeted. So that's a lot. And then you go straight into your chaos skills. Now I do use Runic Wither again because it is very, very strong, Language of Demise, for the silence and for the dot. But then for this one, for Dimension Duel, because we have such high cooldowns literally everywhere on this build, I actually recommend this one, which is Chaos Magic, Chaos Judgment. So and we're using this instead of Chaos Sphere. Now this one only has 8.5 second cooldown. Required stamina is 11. It does apply the dot still, and it does 262% damage. Whole idea here, oh, and it also increases stamina consumption by the target by 30%. This one has such a low cooldown, especially when you have max CDR, which you're going to want to do, and I'll show you momentarily, both from the stats, Omega cards, and badges, as well as a specialization, that we are definitely going to get max cooldown. So with max cooldown, you're looking at 4 to 5 seconds. You can basically keep this dot applied the whole time, non-stop, keep it going forever. Now, I will note that it does not track, so you do have to make sure you hit them, but it is AoE. So give or take, but with this build in particular, with Dimension Duel, I feel like you're going to want a skill that comes off cooldown faster, so you're not just starved for using a skill the whole time and just autoing. So that's going to do it for our skills. Let's go ahead and talk about, just so carefully, our Omega cards as well as the battle badges. So right now I just have obviously just the Dark Domain, which I did not recommend for this build. We'll talk about where Dark Domain comes into effect in the next build, which I'll have coming out later this week, because there is a very specific build that does very, very well with Dark Domain. But we'll talk about that later, a little sneak peek. So right now I have Magneto. They do okay, but I'm actually going to strongly recommend you do Thanos badges. And that is with a caveat that we do as early as, well, by the time this video goes live, the new badges are already going to be out from the new invasion. So, but in its current state, without knowing how good those battle badges are, I would still recommend Thanos, because those are going to help you get to your max cooldown. When it comes to your Omega cards, I would definitely recommend going for the usual, right? So when it comes to your special cards, you're going to basically want to use whatever special cards you have. And then after that, you want to prioritize crit damage, defense pin, probably reverse them since this is PvP. So defense pin, crit rate, crit damage, and then so on and so forth, which of course, when it comes to your badges and your gear, you want to make sure you get at least a couple rolls of stam recovery. So these would not be good boots. So you want to get at least 2 rolls of stam recovery. If you, in a perfect world, you'll get 3 rolls or 2 rolls of cooldown decrease, but at least 2 and 2 would be perfect. That would definitely be the ones that I would go for the stats. And then for your battle badges and your Omega cards, go for defense, pierce, cooldown, crit rate, crit damage, and those types of things. Those are the stats that I would prioritize. Wherever you get them from, it doesn't matter. That's the cool thing about Scarlet Witch, is that it doesn't matter specifically what you use, as long as you get the stats you need for her to do well. So you want max cooldown, you want your stam recovery decently high, because a lot of these skills cost a ton of stamina. So those are going to be the stats, gears, and stats for badges, gear, and Omega cards that I would recommend. And last but not least, I do want to show you the specialization. Well, we'll touch on enhanced potential real quick. You want to max it. If you're using her at max at all, you're going to want to max this out. So I have the first 4 already maxed, but if you were maybe needing to prioritize, I would definitely do attack, and then defense, pen, crit damage, and then attack again. And then here I would definitely, on the third one, would pick up cooldown. Guard damage, you could probably skip out, then pick up attack. And then you want cooldown decrease again, attack again, and then last but not least, attack and then accuracy rate. This is a really good amount of accuracy rate, so which is beautiful. And I say the attack because I've seen a lot of builds that people come out with that it feels like Scarlet Witch is not doing a ton of damage. And there's a reason for that. I feel like people are not prioritizing the right specializations, which is a good transition to the specializations for this build. So when it comes to specializations, there's two that I would absolutely have to pick up because we are going for sheer damage with this build. And that's going to be this one, which I've already maxed out, which is called Hex Magic, Hex Domination. Increase damage dealt to a mobile target or target with status effect for 30 seconds. Most of this build, if not all of the builds, are going to be applying different status effects on the target. So this is just free, basically 30% damage you're going to be doing to them. In addition, I would highly recommend Hex Magic Energy Equivalent Exchange, which increases all skill damage dealt to enemies by at max 30%, but also increases the required stamina by 30%, which kind of bites. But again, high stamina from your boots, at least 2 rolls or 3 really would be beautiful. And then this would be just an easy trait to pick up because that would be 60% total damage that you're going to be doing on your skills, which is massive. Then I would actually recommend this one, which is Hex Magic High Speed Hex. Increase status effect accuracy by a % amount and accuracy rate by a % amount when battle lasts for 6 seconds. Again, we're talking about PvP, so you absolutely need the accuracy rate as well as a special effect accuracy because that's going to feed straight into this to make sure that you always get that 30% additional damage to the target. So that is a must pick up there. Last but not least, you can flex a few different ones. I'm still sticking to this one, which is the recover stamina by 18 to 21%. And then obviously that's what I'm at now. It's more at higher levels, once every 5 times. And like I mentioned on my PvE build for Scarlet Witch, this does not technically have a cooldown. So after you get the stamina recovery, it automatically starts counting the next 5 skills again. So by the time its cooldown is up, you can literally just use it again and keep it basically off cooldown. So you always get that burst of stamina. The only one that I would recommend flexing if you do have enough stamina, and this is a really big caveat for my min-maxers out there, I see you in the chat, but you definitely want to use this one instead, which is Mystic Witchcraft. Fires magic that spreads to 5 enemies and deals damage to a % of attack and inflicts silence for 2 seconds, which is just massive. When using a witch class skill, cooldown 12 seconds. We are using a few witchcraft skills, which is why this one is a very nice pickup. In fact, if you, like I said, once you get to that threshold of having enough stam, which I can't tell you that specific amount, it's going to depend on your build and all the different places you get stam recovery from, as well as your cooldown, because you do need to mix and match those two to have a nice balance. You want to hit cooldown max, but you also want to have a ton of the stam recovery. So these are the two that I would offset depending on how much of the recovery you have for your stamina. So that's going to do it for this build. I am very excited about Scarlet Witch. I cannot wait to main her once Transmutation comes out. I am working on my own Eyes of Osiris set, and I won't tell you just how much nanoing I'll be able to do to it. You'll have to wait for that for a different video once we get to transmutate. But for now, that is going to do it for this build. I do, like I said in the beginning of this video, have a second video that is going to be coming out very soon about a second build for Scarlet Witch that focuses on PvP as well, but focuses more on the support and what we'll call the true witchcraft side of Scarlet Witch, the true witchery side of her, instead of just sheer damage, which this build brought you. So this build is going to bring you more kills, whereas the other one is probably going to bring you more assists, but maybe more wins in total. So this is more of like a selfish build or a solo build, whereas the other one is great for true teamwork when you're working with a whole alliance or group going into a mega war. So if you want to see that video, make sure you're subscribed, and until next time, lock it in. And if you haven't already seen my video that talks about the best PvE build for Scarlet Witch, make sure you click on this video right now.